Welcome back. A Nottingham rave fan is the latest to die at a rave event after apparently overdosing on the drug Ecstasy. Hot on the heels of his death, the government is to give police new powers to break up illegal raves. But how safe are the raves which already get the go-ahead? Well, with us we have Lloyd Blake, who runs the Hummingbird Club in Birmingham, the scene of the rave where that incident sadly happened. But that incident aside, Lloyd, do you think that the whole rave culture, which seems to be so much of what young people are involved in today, is basically a sort of antisocial and unhealthy thing for them to be involved in?
No, not at all. Raves basically are entertainment. It's an entertainment value that young people go out to find. It's music, it's business, it's fun. One cannot hide one's head to say that there are problems and there are some unsavory sides to it, but raves basically are good fun for young people.
Club owners like you have to have your licences, and yet thousands of people come into the clubs. Don't you think that the buck stops with you if events go horribly wrong?
No, not at all, Sue. You have to adhere to the conditions of the local authority, environmental officers' conditions, the police conditions, and the fire officers' conditions. You have searches at the door, but you cannot stop people from using drugs if they do want to. People will take drugs before they come to your venue. You cannot search people's persons, and you can only accept responsibility so far.
Right, so there is a point at which you really can't say you have control over what individuals in that scene are going to get up to.
Not at all.
Okay, over here, Vera. Vera, your brother, I beg your pardon, Debbie, let's start with Debbie. Your brother, Brian, he loved raves. He was one of the people that Lloyd's talking about. What did they do for him?
Well, first of all, he killed him. Then, of a weekend, while he was, you know, on his ecstasy and at the raves, he was on top of the world. He'd give you the earth, he'd give you anything, he'd swing his arms round you, he loved you. Come Monday morning, you know, he'd come down off his ease, so-called, he'd be paranoid, he'd call you everything. He was, you think the devil was in him.
So he had this terrific personality change.
Yeah.
How long do you think this whole thing took him to get part of his culture, part of his lifestyle?
Well, I'd say he was 18 when he first started taking, you know, going to the raves, so-called, like, of a weekend. And he was 20 when he died. Well, he'd come off them, say 6 months. He'd stopped taking these and stopped going to the raves.
Vera, you're his mum, 17, 18 months now since Brian died. Tell me about what happened. You were there, weren't you?
Yes. Brian, he came in one Friday night, about 1:30, and I shouted to him, "Good night, Brian." Brian said, "Good night." And then about 10 to 5 in the morning, I heard noises, and I went in. It was Brian screaming. He was fitting all over the floor. Buckets of water was coming out of him. He was just fitting everywhere, banging his head, screaming, and the life just went out of him.
Who do you blame?
The rave clubs, the raves. Because before the raves, Brian was a shy, lovable lad. And he just changed completely when he started going to raves.
James Perkins, sitting opposite you, you organise some of the largest raves that are held in this country, have organised them for some years now. It's a culture that people have a real knee-jerk reaction to. They're often very hostile to it. When we hear tragedies like this, don't you think we're right to have that response?
I mean, I think it's great to have, I think it's important that people should be concerned, but I mean, I totally sympathise with both of your stories. Are both very, very sad. But I don't really think they're representative of what actually goes on out there. There's a lot of people actually out there, probably even tonight, actually having a great time going to these parties.
Yeah, they say that they're going to drop dead, though, do they?
Well, I mean, really, when you look at...
My son took them for months, and then out of the blue, one tablet killed him. One tablet, I've got his death certificate in my bag. Nothing was mixed with the ecstasy. It was pure ecstasy. blood poison.
Before we go any further, Fiona, can I bring you in here? You've looked at raves, you've been to raves as research for something you did for the Sunday Times. Now, we're talking about raves here and ecstasy as though they're one and the same thing, are they?
Well, I would say, unfortunately, raves are now synonymous with the word, ecstasy. It's very, very sad about your son. But, unfortunately, researchers would say, medical researchers have proved that ecstasy doesn't actually, kill. Individuals have
But it killed my son.
Individuals have had an allergic reaction to ecstasy, just as people die from bee stings or eating frozen peas or what have you. What ecstasy does do over long-term use is that it destroys the serotonin in your brain, which is the cells associated with, pleasure and heightened perception. So when you take ecstasy, you feel that wonderful feeling of euphoria, which I'm obviously
and episodes all about that.
Well, that's right. And then what happens after that is that the serotonin becomes depleted, and then you get the feelings of depression, which obviously
you sound like an advert for it. There's a chap sitting opposite you that will probably not have the same kind of impression. Dr. Adrian Rogers, is she right? Within sort of reasonable limits and in moderation, all things are okay.
Well, technically, her biochemistry is fine, isn't it? But I mean, the whole rave scene is synonymous with drug taking, and that's why the British Heart Foundation wrote to every single doctor in this country last October and said that there is a clear association between raves and ecstasy is very dangerous, and this is what to look out for. It warned every single doctor in this country. But you're actually exploiting young people. We heard about exploitation earlier on. This is a serious exploitation of young people. It isn't a question of freedom for young people. Raves are about drugs. The music's about drugs, the scenarios, large numbers of people. It's all about the exchange of drugs. The whole culture is about drugs. And because we have no effective drug laws in this country, you can get away with it.
Paul
now, hopefully
Staines,
that'll change.
You're another organiser of raves. Is he right?
He's right partly. I mean, I think the culture is about drugs to a large extent, and a large number of people do take drugs. But I don't think everyone's going to die. Hundreds of thousands of people go to these raves, and how many have died?
Yeah,
you're
one of
only
them was my
interested in
brother.
getting the money in.
First of all, is that the public should know that, a significant number of people do die. That's very important. So you are stupid if you run the risk.
Of cancer from smoking.
Well, and I think that you should...
People die, it's all right. If everyone dies, it's not all right. Come on, you can't say that.
It's your own choice what you do.
I think
What do you
today,
mean your own
14
choice? We're
people...
talking about kids here. Some of the people in these raves are only 14 or 15 years old. You can't say they're responsible.
Well, if you live in a health fascist state where nobody can have whatever they want to do, have any of their vices, that's fine. But I'd like a level of optimum freedom where I'm allowed to do whatever I want.
But at the age of 14, they're not able to make their choices like that.
To make out there that basically you're supposed to be 18 years old anyway to go to these events. And it
Oh,
is
come on. You're supposed to be
Alan,
18, but they're getting at 14 or 15.
Can I ask
You know that.
as a responsible parent, if, say, I don't know if you are a parent, would you allow your 14 or 15-year-old daughter or son to go to this type of event and go out all night long? Because I certainly wouldn't allow mine.
Well, I'm not a parent, and I wouldn't let mine. But some of these kids do get into it. That's the point. And you people who organise them are responsible. And I think it's very wrong that Lloyd Blake can say, well, it's nothing to do with me. I'm not responsible. I just organise it.
Listen, Councillor Blumenthal, I keep telling you, don't attack me personally, otherwise I'm going to see you in court. I believe you're a latter-day Enoch Powell who want to make a political career for yourself in the House of Parliament, and you're attacking Hummingbird, you're attacking people about things you don't know.